Welcome to another installment of WestEdge Wednesday. This is episode number 4 in the series of 10. This program is called Designing for Disaster, Smart Architecture for a Resilient Southern California. You know, there was a theme, not a theme by itself. There were a number of themes this year, but one of the themes that emerged while putting this programming together was the fires back in January of 2025, rebuilding, resiliency, just this whole idea that we have to build back stronger, build stronger and smarter. And this program speaks to that. Let me just say thank you to WestEdge for allowing me to produce these programs. Thank you to Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, friend to designers and architects everywhere, with a remarkable trade program, and so appreciative for what they do. Thank you to Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs for designing an exquisite space, which you can see if you go check out the videos. But right now you're here and you're listening to this episode, so maybe you're driving and you can't watch it. So I'm appreciative that you're here. This program, Southern California faces worsening environmental threats like earthquakes, mudslides, heat, floods, high winds. The panel you're about to hear explored resilient home designs using advanced materials and techniques to protect against multiple hazards. It also covered trauma-informed, community-centered, and climate-smart approaches. The goal, to build homes that are strong, future-ready, and connected to their people. This program was moderated by Adam Hunter, huge fan of Adam's, and features Marcella Oliver, Todd Paolillo, Stacy Munich, Sarah Malek Barney, and Richard Manion. Love this program. Hope you do too. Enjoy it, and you can hear it all right after this. This was the second year that Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, sponsored and presented the theater at the WestEdge Design Fair. So appreciative to them. In addition to everything that they do for sponsorship, they also brought in partner Best Buy, partner Geek Squad, Hisense, and made possible a video wall to Kim Gordon's design that just, it made it pop. And I think that it's so important to understand that the most important word in design today is service. You know, product is important, price is important, selection is important, but service, stellar service, makes all the difference in the world. And if you're a designer, if you're in the trade, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home has a simply remarkable trade program. Their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade-up program unlike any you've ever experienced before. You have a chance to earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, so much more. I can't even tell you everything here. So make sure to check them out. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for your sponsorship and partnership at the WestEdge Design Fair this year, and for presenting WestEdge Wednesdays, which you're about to hear right now.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. This is our little breakfast brunch lecture talk, right? So happy and honored to be here helping facilitate this great discussion that we're going to have today. You know, normally in the luxury arena, interior design world, we're talking about trends, we're talking about our crazy celebrity clients, we're talking about what the new kitchen appliance that everyone needs to use. And suddenly, when you have an event that we had last January, none of that seems to matter anymore. And all the important things so certainly come straight into focus. And I think that we're at the point right now where we're talking about what actually really matters, which is resilience, which is community. And right now, it's the future of architecture, and it's the future of where we're going. Quickly about me, my name is Adam Hunter. I'm an interior designer here in West Hollywood. I was living in the Palisades when my home burned down. I was in a rental. So I wasn't affected as much as dear friends who are here today who lost their home and their business. And I think we need to keep up the optimism and keep up the enthusiasm because it's a long road ahead. But I think that's what we're going to primarily talk about today with our esteemed panelists. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves if they don't mind. So we'll start with Richard Manion, if you don't mind.
Hi, I'm Richard Manion. Thanks for coming today. I'm an architect and run a firm in Los Angeles. We design private residences across the country and occasionally around the world.
Hello. I'm Malek Barney. I'm the founder and principal designer of Band Design. We have offices in Austin, Texas, and here in LA as well, and it's primarily high-end residential design.
Hi, I'm Stacy Munich, and I'm the principal and lead designer, founder of Stacy Munich Interiors. We're based in Palm Springs and Chicago, and work on luxury residential interior design projects around the country.
Hi, I'm Todd Pialillo. I'm with KA Design Group, a principal there, practicing and working in LA for 25 years now. Same focus, high-end custom residential projects across the country and the world. And very privileged to be here with you all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcella Oliver. I am a USGBC California board member. Thank you for making this happen. I'm super excited. I'm also an architecture professor where we run our studio as an atelier, community-driven design, and using digital twins and high-end technology for social mobility.
Great, thank you. Just going to throw ourselves right in there. With the fires and the Palisades and Altadena, what do you think that taught us about the livability in Southern California? And I'm throwing that out to anyone. Sarah?
Me? Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we've cut a lot of corners over the years. Cost, time, whatever else. And I think the fires really taught us that cutting those corners can be very detrimental. Mm-hmm. And so now thinking about the materiality of what we're working with a little bit more thoughtfully, I think it became very important after the fires. I think, when you're building a home, you're just throwing it up. You're taking great care, but at the same time, you see the overall budget. Well, we could save $20,000 by using this lesser known brand or something that's not fire resistant. It'll be fine. And then now I think we've kind of understand the value of putting more into the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else had any thoughts on that?
I think that now after a year, we're beginning to realize that it's not about one single house, but it's a whole community that got affected. So the rebuilding is more challenging than we can ever imagine because it's not about one single house, and especially we're going to start talking about certain guidelines that is about a block, it's about a community, it's about the habits that now we need to solve. So
exactly. And to that point, Richard, how do you think, what do we do to become better educated about products, and what can we do to increase resilience?
Well, certainly we have opportunities in materials. And we know that, architecturally, people kind of like what they like. But rendering them in materials that may be more suitable for their location and their, what natural disasters might impact them. So, fire is one, and obviously, we have earthquakes and occasionally high winds and others, and then the landscape around them that integrates with them. So I think it's kind of a holistic approach where you need to know what are the impacts to your area, what makes sense in terms of construction techniques and options. There are lots of options without looking like a concrete bunker.
That's exactly what I was going to say. How do you not build a bunch of adobe houses in the Palisades?
Right. And the Palisades was a unique example because you basically had a fire acting as a flamethrower, which is not the typical fire. Mostly it's embers that fly and then get into structures that are deficient in certain ways. So you have a lot of easy solutions like dampers to control the access of embers, materials that are less, or more resistant to fire burning. But if you have a flamethrower, you're going to be in a different situation. That's going to be very difficult. That'll even melt metal and eventually, glazing. So I think
It's
we
such
have
an
to
interesting
kind of
term. You say flamethrower because of the perfect storm.
You have a hurricane force wind with a fire.
Yeah.
There's nothing you're really going to be able to do because it's just too intense. It's like putting a frying pan next to your house. But most of the time, it's a fire that's in an area that could be less spread by more resilient construction, and then adapting the landscape properly with plants that are, resistant to burning, more native, further from, residences. I think it's kind of adapting all those holistically in the construction.
That's actually very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Where is the leadership, guys? Todd, Marcella, where do you think, who should be stepping up? Are the architects? I know that I threw my hat in the ring early on with the foundation that I started, politically, institutionally. What are your thoughts?
I need to say it right now because I don't know if you guys know the United States Green Building Council, national, and we also have it in California, but I don't know if you know, but they were the very first ones in the green movement that gave order to all the different things that we need to talk about green: water, energy, soil, materials. So now they have what is called the USG Green Building Council guidelines. And we have a booth, and there's basically 5 strategies. We work with very reputable small and big firms of things you can do right away. We actually show these to 170 middle schoolers using digital twins, and we feel very proud about these guidelines. And we also have another resource, really important, called the Net Zero Accelerator. We have hundreds of products that come to Los Angeles that we have vetted, and we have cohorts of products specifically designed to behave better during these kind of catastrophes. Not only fires, but earthquakes, epidemics. This is the world we're going to live, and we're working really hard to create a hub for you guys to come and see. So we can tell you more about it on our look for Julie. Raise your hand so they can see. So that's my 2 cents. I think organizations like these,
I love that.
architects, engineers, interior designers, and I feel very proud to be saying that.
For you?
Yeah, sure. I think leadership is the important word because thousands of people have stepped up. It's been incredible, the turnout that different communities and different factions, even within the design community, have showed up. But getting them all to communicate with each other, that's been the real trick of all of this. And I think something like this panel and all the people here to hear all these different perspectives is what's important. Because you have something like, the CS 2.0 program, that was the case study initiative of, probably 60 architects. But Crest was able to get that group to have town hall forums with city leaders and planners, for example, and also for those architects to importantly share their anecdotes of all their clients, because that's really who we're doing this for. And
one of those people who really stepped up is me. No, I'm joking, of course, but my wonderful Kaylee Nichols, who's in the audience, who's been with me 15 years, and I started something called LA Can Do, Creatives Aid in Natural Disasters, and we were able to give $3 to $5 million worth of new furnishings to people within the first couple of months, which was great for the thousands of people that love me. Thank you. That's so nice. Thank you. It is not great for the 4,000 people who hate me. But we had to figure out, we're going through our list. And one of the things we're doing is on December 9th, we're throwing an event at the PDC. You're all welcome in the lobby. And it's because one thing you didn't think of as we come closer to holidays is the donations of all the people that lost their generational Christmas gifts, Christmas ornaments, Christmas legacy materials, right? So, and it's like the last thing you're thinking about when you're thinking about, I need a place to live. So, also, donate, please. Go to lacando.org/donate, and we're really trying to raise cash. And I think that we'll speak about this. I think there's a general fatigue that I'm noticing, that I've seen people's enthusiasm wane, and you can't. This is a 10-year build here. We have to stay motivated. And there are times that even I want to stay in bed, and I'm sure everyone feels this way. Certainly people who've lost their homes. I mean, it's totally overwhelming, but we can't. We have to keep staying up. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that out there. Stacy, what is the loss of community? I'm going to combine a couple things. What does the loss of community mean on the ground? Loss of home and property. What are the real practical consequences here beyond the headlines?
First of all, is there anybody in the audience that did lose their home?
Home and business.
Home and business. So I'm deeply sorry. You know, it is really just a
You're right.
horrible thing to go through. So I was talking to a prospective client earlier this week who lost their home in Altadena, and they had just bought the home and moved in a year before. A couple, you know, starting their life together, and they were not completely connected with their community yet because they were new to the area. And what they had shared with me is they're closer now with the people that lost their homes in the neighborhood, and that their community has actually come together and become much stronger and more cohesive. And as they're in a temporary home currently and thinking about and planning their rebuild, they're really looking forward to being closer with those neighbors than they were before. What was the other question?
Oh, no, I just said I love that, actually. That's meaningful to just in a mindful way. What are the real practical consequences beyond the headlines, and maybe what are the broader economic and social impacts that we're not addressing? And by the way, I think from here on in, anybody who feels anything, I'm supposed to assign you questions, but if you feel it, say it.
So there are a lot of people that may have been underinsured, unfortunately, and are really struggling with the insurance agencies. Coincidentally, my mom and I have a condo together in Chicago in a high-rise, and 3 years ago we had a fire 2 stories above our unit, and our unit was completely damaged, water and smoke. And you know, some people can't afford to rebuild the type of home or the type of business that they had before the fire. And there are more fabricated homes, prefab homes, manufactured homes that are really offering solutions. And not to take anything away from our brilliant architects, but some people can't do it. So,
and I had an idea, actually, going again off script here, where maybe architects could combine with, I'm calling them either prefabulous, if you're gay, or precision built, sounds a little better. But my idea is, can we incorporate that? And some architects that I've spoken with are like, God forbid, get away, and I understand. And some are like, oh, that's interesting, right? Like, is there a way that they could improve it? I know that Marmel Redziner has their own sort of version of prefab homes. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to think about, because people, especially in the alphabet streets, and I'm speaking specifically about the Palisades now, not Altadena, sorry, could live in there, could build like a guest house, and they could get back immediately. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think there's something in that mental mindset, right? Do you want to be living
you're absolutely
dirt
right.
where there are
My
no
sister just
trees
sold her
and
house
no one's
because of
there?
that.
I mean, that's sort of, I think, a big mental exercise a lot of homeowners are going through as well. Like, yeah, I want to rebuild, and I could pop up an ADU and live there, but is that community there? Are they coming back? How long will it take for them to come back? You know, that's a real...
And the health implications, which I know people
which
are still
unknown.
unsure of.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one place where architects can help in terms of visualizing the future, because for a lot of people, they just see the devastation or they just see the dirt. And, you know, let's face it, houses take a long time to build. People need much more immediate things, which is where a lot of other people have stepped in.
Yeah.
And, you know, the most remarkable thing up there is not the devastation, but there's not a place you can stand in the Palisades and look into the distance and still see part of the community intact. Still see neighborhoods that maybe, while decimated, there's portions that are there to graft back onto and rebuild. And I think we have the power, just through the tools that architects use and designers in general, to vision, you know, a community that can come back again.
And we're doing 2 things, the United States Green Building Council, because if you notice, even at different levels of income, that they don't have the language right? To even start communicating with an architect, right? So you have probably 2-3 generations that they just passed the house. And now you're all of a sudden, that's a whole, as we all know, designing a house. So what we're doing is creating a lot of workshops to educate the community with the language, with the renderings, with the visualization. So that's been very successful. And the second thing is that we also have a platform where you can actually start visualizing it as an urban planning tool. I don't know if you guys know what a digital twin is. So basically the aerospace and manufacturing, they've been using it for a long time. But the idea, and I'm sure architects, there's no other way to design these days, but you make a model, a digital model of the way it could be and the what-if scenarios. And that's where you can start bringing all your products from the Net Zero Accelerator. Basically, rendering, visualization, engaging it is already very important for engaging different levels of community.
That's a workshop is a great idea. I'm going to Richard and to the architects. I'm curious of what you think of how we do not get a bunch of, tract homes. I certainly know some builders who are just cranking out A, B, C, D, E, and that's my biggest fear. And then the other fear is, how do we make sure it's not Beverly Park? Not that there's anything wrong with Beverly Park, but I mean pricing itself out. So it's a fully Lamborghini kind of town now, which is the opposite of what the Palisades was.
Sure. I think you're going to get less Beverly Park in general because uber affluent people will want to live in an area already set and established. Mature trees, whatever it is, the environment, they're not going to want to deal with that in their lives. That's, obviously the more money you have, the more you can be removed from unpleasantries. But I think it's the question.
I guess what I mean by that, just to be clear, is cost prohibitive. Like the Alphabet Streets are now, it's going to cost you $6 million to live in the Alphabet Streets, where it used to be 1.5. That's what I meant by upping the.
Yeah. Well, I mean that gets into broader economic problems. I think that are a little bit, based about availability of housing and cost of doing business. And LA, unfortunately, is not necessarily the most proactive city in making development easy. There's a lot of hurdles you have to go through. When I moved here, it took 3 weeks to get a residential building permit for a 15,000 square foot house.
Whoa.
Now you're lucky if it's 6 months. So, and never mind the fire and all that. So I think it's a combination of, maybe educating the public the best you can and finding out what people really want in their environment, in their neighborhood. I mean, obviously we don't have universal standards of design. Yeah. We're not in that age anymore. We're in a grand age of eclecticism. And you could create some kind of overlay districts or some sort of standards in the area.
I worry about the newness. And I don't know that there's anything we can do about that. You could put a Spanish next to a modern, next to a traditional, next to a colonial. They're all going to feel a little spanking new.
Right. But that's what you probably see in every street in Los Angeles that doesn't have a historic overlay district. So,
true.
You don't, it's the nature of where we are in individual expression. So I don't think you can avoid that. I think some of it should be scale and sense of, how building volumes relate to one another and they're not overwhelming one another, so it doesn't look like, either live in an urban environment or suburban environment. These urban townhouses can tend to be a little bit neither here nor there. Yeah. And some of it's landscape and approach in that regard.
Yeah.
You could try to create some standards. The city of Beverly Hills does a fairly good job to try to create a design review where there is, you submit a certain type and you try to stick to it. Now
I hope they'll do that, or are they just going to say, get it up, get it up, get it up?
Well, it's very hard because you're also trying to get the community back as fast as possible. Yeah. And, the only way to do that would be to be like an Irvine company, essentially control everything, but then the aesthetic is going to be 100% uniform.
Right.
So I think unfortunately it's probably not a solvable problem. The question is just trying to mitigate it as much as possible.
That's a great answer. There's a huge human impact here, huge, like what you were talking to, Stacy. And there's a quote that says, "People rebuild buildings, but buildings also shape people. And I think of how many times I've spent in Cafe Vita, which was a little, shitbox in the Palisades, but it meant so much to so many people. And it was the symbol of it. I know that, and again, I'm speaking primarily to the Palisades because I lived there. So that's only, I'm mentioning that. That there's the framework of the Chase on the corner there. There was the Chase Bank and the Starbucks corner, and the framework is still there that they were going to maybe make into a park. I'm a 9/11 New Yorker, and I remember, think of all the new architecture and the new things that came from that. But you have to think of the lasting physical damage that this does, and how people are going to, recover from that, and how do we view home in the wake of these events. And I guess finally, and I'm throwing this out, this was the comboing of 3 questions. What role does design play in well-being, which I think we're really becoming aware of in this mindfulness world that we live in? And what can we realistically do?
Sure, I'll answer that, or start, because the rest of you, please. I think that sometimes when we're focused just on the individual home and the individual aesthetic of that and sort of throwing darts at something that's more successful or less successful, but at a community level, a lot of attention can be put to the character of the neighborhood in terms of landscaping and restoring. And there was neighborhoods that didn't even have sidewalks, and taking an approach, is this something we want to reintroduce, a fabric that allows people to see it as a community and not just a collection of houses rebuilt. And secondly, people came to California because of the health benefits and being that close to the ocean. So just embracing the potential here for reintroducing landscape in a sensible way.
I love that.
Let the city come in and plant, do major tree planting instead of leaving it to individuals on each property. Offer programs that subsidize things like that. So there's a lot of places where we can look at it at a community scale and not put it all on the individual property owner.
And this is where I think I have a lot of hope for the new technology, because you're going to require urban planning. We're seeing that a lot of things that if we had a huge bow swell, that is not just one house, but it will probably sit 100 feet, 200 feet, or if we have a concrete wall, a CMU can be so many different textures and colors, but it wouldn't be just one parcel. It will be more efficient if it's 200 feet. So how do we start bringing in urban planners, architects? So one of the things we're building is literally creating a model of the entire neighborhood, so you can literally drag and drop like Minecraft, right? And then, like Minecraft for real, right? So how can you actually, do you want to put hempcrete? Do you want to put metal? Do you want to put cement? Is it going to go?
Shake. Can we do that? Can we make these cedar shake houses?
Not
But
real.
can't you just put concrete and then stick on the cedar?
No.
I don't know. I'm really genuinely
There
curious.
are some materials. There's some unique GFRC materials that can look exactly like
They
wood.
can look like.
It's really amazing. There's a great company that does this in the Simi Valley area, a local company.
Great.
And we've got wood beams for trellises that are actually made of this material that's
So many of those ranch houses were wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like
They were
look
lovely.
like. Yeah.
That's interesting. I also think maybe community centers. I think people are really working on the community centers to
Pocket
help.
parks.
Yeah.
Pocket parks, green spaces. That also will help a lot for another catastrophe. So now you have all these fields that have to come together to create something that is sustainable.
Yeah. Stacy, anybody any thoughts?
Well, I think it also forces us all to think outside the box and look at different materials in a different way and more innovative, sustainable materials. I was in Japan earlier this year, and Ando's work is primarily concrete and glass and metal, and it is gorgeous. And when you're inside the home, it doesn't feel like you're in a concrete bunker. So I think it's, really bringing in some materials that were not used when these neighborhoods were built, and hopefully rebuilding
Maybe it's a new
better, more
look,
sustainable
as long as
homes.
it's not the Jetsons. Maybe it's a new look,
I like the Jetsons.
I do too. I
Come
was
on.
thinking, I love the city of the future. I think that's a great idea. I just think it still has to have heart.
For soul. It has to have soul.
It has to have
Cultural
soul.
Yeah, but that comes from the people in it. And I think one of the most exciting things for me that this positive spin on this, and my kids are gonna kill me. They're here in the audience. But we were driving here today, and they said, "What are you speaking about?" I said, "Designing for disaster." It's very uplifting, I know. And they said, "Oh, I know how to do that. We learned how to build a house that can weather through a hurricane."
See?
And she told me about what the tools were and the mechanisms
Wow.
to build a house.
That's what I'm
That's
talking
impressive,
about.
ladies.
And then they said, "Oh yeah," and then we spray a hose, and does it stand or does it not? But I thought the education they're getting in public school about this now
That's
is
great.
amazing. And that I don't know if you would have seen that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's
You're right.
now on their mind, which maybe is a good thing or a bad thing, but they're at least educated and prepared for it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny. I was saying I'm a 9/11 New Yorker. In some ways, I thought this was worse, and because it didn't end. There was one big boom with the other thing, and this is just a slow burn. Sorry for the pun there, but it really is. And I think that people, again, it's the resilience I'm finding is waning, and I hope that's not the case. I think there are superheroes. This is a polarizing figure, but Rick Caruso I'm related to because his daughter is my client, and he has some fantastically amazing ideas. And that's someone who's a developer, but also connected to the city and also connected. I just feel like there needs to be a lot of these people. You know what I mean? Again, Palisades Village was not popular when it went in, and no one wanted sort of the Disneyfication of Palisades, but it's my favorite place. You know what I mean? Like I think it grew on people. So. That's something to be aware of, is finding those people. And I guess that the next part is talking about the future, the city of the future. What does that mean? And I'm fascinated to hear what you guys think about that. Like the sprinklers on roofs, and where do we go from here? What has to change incrementally, but also not incrementally, but systematically? What's going to be done? Who's got to do it?
Well, you need, obviously, governmental leadership, because if you're going to make any requirements to existing structures elsewhere, and a lot of us, maybe if we don't live in the hills, I have a place in the hills and a place somewhere else, so I'm used to both problems both, and I was evacuated on the Encino side so they could fight the fire. And so it's a question of, what's going to be mandated, what's going to be required, because that has to be done incrementally. It's a very expensive issue for many people, but that leadership comes from government, evaluating. Right now it's the insurance companies telling us what to do in the hillside zone, and
Can the government take that over? I mean, I'm hoping.
Well, I think you need to have certain guidance, regulations about it, so it's viable. Because a lot of things, if you just lose your insurance, then you're probably going to think about selling your house.
Yeah.
Perhaps in this,
of course,
modern time we live in, where these disasters are not infrequent. And the other is leadership in the community about what kind of community do we want to build when we're given what is an odd opportunity to reimagine a whole, area. And one of the things about Los Angeles is it's more like Queens spread out over the size of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
It's not a normal,
True.
It's a different environment. It's a group of suburbs that are now becoming more semi-urban or urban. And we're dealing with the transit issues and, people getting around, and where do people who help and work for everyone else live and have a viable. I mean, my office in West LA, the little tiny 2-bedroom houses near it are $2 million.
Yeah.
My employees can't afford those.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people can't afford those.
Course.
And that's all that is, and there's some apartments, et cetera. But the Palisades, you now have the opportunity to reimagine what should we do in infill areas so that everyone can kind of live a little bit closer to where they need to be and still create, a vibrant sense of community. It's a little easier if you're in Hancock Park or, they're just closer areas, but the Palisades was a bit remote, hard access, one major street.
Yeah.
But you needed a lot of people to be there.
Yeah.
And work there.
Yes.
And so I think it, maybe gives us a little bit more thought about zoning and how we deal with now recreating an area, and then how does that inform the city as a whole?
They did get rid of the mansion tax, right? The ULA, which was a very big deal.
That's
like a huge deal.
That's huge. I want to say just something
Yeah.
super quick, because I do work with government agencies, and these are some really great news. As you guys know, LA County has 5 supervisors, and maybe out of these we can continue a conversation. And you all know GIS, right? So right now it's a very strong effort. 2 days ago they have the GIS day, and we have all these GIS, 150 different all over LA County, and they're aligning all their services so we can look at water flows and energy and heat, and we're working with NASA JPL. So I think conversations, that's why I think these panels are so provocative.
Girl, you are in it.
We gotta do these.
I love it. I love it. Brava.
Yeah. So hopefully we can continue to make it happen.
Sarah?
But I to piggyback on that, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but education.
You're right.
I'm a designer. I cannot pretend to know everything there is to know about rebuilding a house.
Me too.
Nor should I, And so educate me, educate the professionals, educate one another, and just continuing that education, not just, like you were saying, it tapering off and we sort of lose our steam. No, it's a continuing education that we need to keep going. Yeah.
And also I would speak to the interior design profession. If you are rebuilding a home and you are working with an architect, it's never too soon to bring in a designer who is compassionate and is very thoughtful about the way you may or may not want to live in the home. Not that the architects aren't, but having a team together from the beginning to guide you through that process. And so when you do rebuild and recreate your new home and your new sacred space, it feels like you and how you choose to live in it in a new way.
Yeah, I think that's valuable. I think architects are just starting now to have the phone ring, but I know that it decimated. I lost 4 projects. One was, published and then burned down 4 weeks later. I mean, it's just trauma. You know what I mean? The client actually moved to Paris. Just was like, I'm done. We're going to start over, do something new. Which actually leads me to, when we do maybe get to questions at some point, I'm curious to hear from people who, I'm so sorry, were so affected by this on a personal level, and what you think we might be able to do, how you think we might be able to generate a new life here. Now I'm going back to my notes. Thoughts on required systematic changes, undergrounding power lines. Here are some examples, which I know we've always wanted to do anyway. Lowering permissible density. I do not know what that one means. Better use of infill. Also don't know what that one means.
See, we need continuing education.
See, right, exactly.
That's why we got the workshop.
I know sustainable materials, yay. Transition from wood to metal to concrete or other strategic building. I'm going to give this one to you if you don't mind, Todd. Strategic building practices to reduce waste, to reduce cost, etc.
Sure. So, I mean, I think I just want to go back to a previous topic you mentioned about the mansion tax, and we have to make sure that all of these ideas aren't born on the back of the Palisades residents themselves. There's so many efforts, but if we can't test these ideas against communities like Altadena and other sort of edge communities, because some people they need to get back into their homes, and we can't. There was some good regulations that were lifted that I was happy to see. Even things that had to do with, as much as we love solar and the mandates with the state, those mandates were meant to happen over, incrementally as a slow accretion of time happens, not for an entire community to have to solve the world's problems all at once. So I just wanted to kind of circle back on that. But to your other question, remind me, we're talking about...
what are the systematic changes that need to happen? And I'm talking here about materials, permissible density, changing from wood to metal, concrete, building practices, reducing waste and cost.
Sure. Well, so on the materials, I'll say globally that, let's think of resiliency not just in the terms of fire, but bringing back an idea that architecture and construction and homes in general, they should last a lifetime. And I think a lot of the building community has drifted away from that, making it just a commodity. Yes. And so if we can wrap our heads around making these decisions on some of these materials, that it's not just about a singular event, but that I have something that I'm creating that's going to have value that's going to surpass my life itself. Yeah. And, as these people have mentioned, the technology that is advanced with these materials is it's amazing.
How do you feel about prefab and all that stuff, both of you gentlemen?
Well, this is so
that's like someone saying to me, fake marble.
Well, no.
I'm like, oh, I'm so happy for you. That's great.
I think,
I know they do.
you know, this is where people have used the word tract housing as a bit of a boogeyman, but the sad truth is, who's already figured out how to build stuff quickly and affordably? It has been that community.
Yeah.
And so I think the prefab community really needs to think about how they're solving problems on a mass scale and not just one-off solutions for individual architects, because that's sometimes where it gets tripped up. They come and they court an individual architect, and we want to customize, we want to make it unique.
Yeah.
And sometimes that flies in the face of where the efficiencies are in some of these prefab programs. So we have to find a sort of middle ground of being able to get that mass production, but not force it to be something that it can't be.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think prefab has to be ugly by nature,
No.
or you know.
I agree.
From the 70s.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you look at a lot of, quote unquote, a lot of the neighborhoods in LA were tract houses. They were just, that's what a tract looked like in the 30s.
Right.
When it just was a bit more coherent. But those were put together in mass numbers, and now some of them are historic districts. So I think it's something that can work, but it's going to need some guidelines and some.
That's why I wonder if there wasn't some sort of
judgment.
hybrid where an architect could proudly put their name on something, because it is a unique semi-custom home. Again, it's the words you use: precision built, semi-custom. A lot of it I think has to do with branding and marketing in that sense.
For sure.
What was I going to say after that? I'm curious, how am I doing, Josh? What do we got?
Doing great.
Good. Well, I couldn't possibly. Thank you. No, but how much time do we have left?
You got about 10 minutes before questions.
Okay, great. So, what do you guys want to see? Now I'm making up questions. What do you want to see done? Like, if you were in charge, what would you do? I like this for you, because you're in charge already.
I will create a digital twin for each neighborhood, but I will hire local people, local architects, to help us do the model, the digital model, and then have all architects.
Digital
where they
meaning
can-
like they can a client could select. I had an idea where you could pick a house and almost like a Tesla app, but
Yes.
but aligned with the best in the
Exactly,
business.
exactly.
Not
And
aligned with
guidelines.
some of the. I won't say it, but I really want to say
No,
it. Some of
quality.
the developers or the spec people or the
Yes.
contractors who are swirling
Yes.
and looking for opportunities.
And materials too, so
Yeah.
the consumer will be protected too. And now with AI, you can very quickly do wall assembly for thermal, for wind. And what is beautiful about this is that we all know that the wind, the way it moves, the water, you can start looking at the urban planning, macro all the way to micro.
Oh, cool.
And then work with all the government agencies. We already have million amount of data that we can bring, that we already know that neighborhood, and they want to work with us. So I think also through workshops, like you say, we open workshops for professionals, workshops for the community, workshop for products. You can create some really robust interface for participation, and more than anything, agility, right? That's what we need to start doing. And let's all remember, you have a house that is a framing model, like even a garage. Even it can, just by the finishes, can look completely different depending what is the taste, the theme, the innovation, and I think that's why we start like kind of looking like the young generation very easily can understand how one model can look completely different just by the
But
product.
to Richard's point, which I'm going to remember, the newness is what it is. There is an is what it is moment to this. And I never really thought about that. I've been
Yes.
banging my head thinking
Yes.
like, how do we not make it feel
Exactly.
like, some
Forced.
bad areas of Newport Beach, or like, so even in a high-end Singapore, you know what I mean? How do we make it
Yeah.
feel not new?
But there's no
maybe you
design.
can't. Maybe it's going to be a reinvention, Maybe that's
But
part
you know
of the
the
story.
word, you know what the word is? Design.
Design, I agree. Design is so important here.
Design is the key word, and it's not taught. That's why STEAM is so popular. But the word design is very powerful, and I think that's what prefab design, and that's why architects need to step up to the plate, interior designers, architects, landscape, and really share the design.
And I see it happening. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people know Jamie Rummerfield, who's a friend of mine, who's done miraculous things with her. I'm gonna screw it up. Do you know there's a book, a pattern book,
The pattern recognition.
right? Which is talking about all the amazing nuances and things that were very special to those, let's say, the ranch homes, like the windows that were like the leaded crossed windows, and I'm forgetting a bunch of things, but keeping the integrity of what it was, but maybe there's a way of modernizing that, which again gets back to design.
Well, I think that's a big piece of it, right? Like right after the fires happened and everybody's, we got to rebuild. I was scared that people weren't going to be thoughtful about it.
You're right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean drag it out or slow it down, but really pausing, being thoughtful about the design, the details in it, and not just trying to rush it through and get it done. We all want to get it done, but we want to get it done right. And that's a key piece that we have to
Sort of
keep
like
top of mind.
moderating your weight, which I'm only learning to do at 51 years old. You know what I mean? You have to be like, go, 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 but then it's also take a beat.
Take a beat.
It's hard because
you're gonna
now I
make a
feel like people
mistake.
are in the other way. Now
Yeah,
people are
if you're
like,
going
it's
to
going
rush
to take
along, you're
forever.
going to make a mistake, and then we could be right back where we were before. So being thoughtful, mindful about those design choices, the architecture of the home, all of those things, I think let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah, and I think, let's not forget, good design can be infectious. If you lead by example, and I think this is a time, too, where we shouldn't be overly precious about good design. I mean, there's always an idea that good design warrants, the designers have value, and so they should be compensated as such, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But let's lead by example, and let's hope that kind of permeates the community. I do want to go back to, some things, how we could change the community. There's a few things I think the city could step in on and do more broadly. One of them, it's a very simple thing, but do a mass survey of the entire Palisades so that the individual homeowners don't have to come forward with those expenses themselves. Do a mass geological survey so that individual homeowners don't need to come and have a soils report for each thing. I mean, these are very technical things, but these are things that slow the process down. And I think, there's a lot of things that you mentioned just with the information sharing that's happening. And there's a couple things that are getting off the ground. The city is trying to get, sort of AI layer to being able to show people very quickly what the total development potential of the property is. Because sometimes that's the hardest thing to visualize. Like, what can I actually do with this property or not based on very complicated zoning that has been getting simplified. So sorry, I didn't mean to take it away from some of the materials conversation, but I think this is a place where I think the city needs to step up in a different way. Yeah.
Quality standards,
Right.
quality guidelines with
Right.
options. Yeah.
And there are little micro communities in the Palisades. There's the Huntington Palisades, where I think those people will be just fine, as far as taking a long time to build and a great amount of square foot. I think a lot about the Alphabet Streets because I feel like those were so specific to the 50s or whenever they were built. Those tiny little lots, are they going to become like, is somebody going to buy 3 lots so it's a huge home next to 2 tiny homes? I mean, again, I'm just thinking aesthetically, which I know is not important because you're right. People need to get it in their homes, period, the end. And a lot of people don't want to go on this custom build process for years and years, which is what our job is. They just didn't want, they just want back in. And I feel like there are so many questions that are just sort of...
And don't forget SB9, right? Like now, parcels can have quadruplex.
No,
So
I didn't
far-
understand anything you said, so say it for all these people. I could pretend, right? I could be like, yes, SB9, exactly. No idea.
We need the education.
See? Sarah and I are like, help me.
So developers are huge, and I don't know in the Palisades, but for sure in Altadena, so as you guys know, is basically the end of single house, right? A lot of rich communities don't like it because you need more infrastructure. But the idea that on a parcel now you can build an ADU, or now you can actually divide your property and have 4 houses, so that's a quadruplex. So,
Wait, you can do that now?
yeah,
Really?
yeah, but might not be good.
That's not saying doesn't sound so good.
Well, are you going to have a quadruplex and then have like a, traditional ranch house? So more than ever, you need to have like a visualization.
I think people are super thoughtful about it. This discussion is
Yeah.
that. I do think that. I just don't
Yeah.
want it to turn into 20 years.
Yeah, but I just worry about in Altadena specifically, the land is obviously less expensive. A foreign developer can come in, snatch up 20 lots, and then you got your tract homes that are not well designed and are
I think that's happened in Malibu. I mean, I know it has. I think someone bought $100 million worth of stuff in Malibu. What are they going to do? Build a mall?
It'll be worse in Altadena.
Yeah. I wish I knew more about Altadena, so I'm sorry for any of those who, if you can speak to that a little bit more. So many of my clients have been in the Palisades. I lived in the Palisades. My sister lived in the Palisades. So that's sort of why I'm coming from that point of view. I think we should continue to and open this up, if you don't mind. I'm gonna do it. I just got my 10-minute warning, which is great. So I'm going to start with my mentor. I'm going to pick on Greg Champion and his wonderful wife, Jen, who were dear friends of mine, who were extremely involved. Greg was on the news that entire week because he was doing astonishing things while he lost his home, lost his business. I was lucky enough to go on a shopping spree with the girls because my friend owns Aloe, so I got to do a little shopping with his daughter. We're trying to find the light here, but could you tell us about your journey and where you are and all that stuff?
Well, first off, I want to thank all of you for being here, and lots of education, insight. Adam, you're quite the host. Thank you. You know, I did want to think about, Todd, you got me thinking about this. What we need to create is a playbook for the community, the house owner, everybody, because this happened in Paradise a few years ago. This happened at Wolseley a few years ago. We didn't get downloaded the playbook. And this rebuild of the Palisades has to be, what are we doing with the power lines? What are we doing with the water? What are we doing with the sidewalks? Let's get it done right, because guess what? Mother Nature is undefeated. She's going to come back.
Yeah, one way or another.
And bigger and stronger and more often.
Amen. Amen.
But climate change doesn't exist, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, oops.
So the point is that I would love to come up with some sort of playbook that just covers all of it. And then guess what we do? We pass this playbook down to Orange County, who passes off to Scottsdale, to other fire zones, and all of a sudden every community, because here's the thing that pissed me off. I had a pool in my backyard. The fire trucks pulled up, they had no water. But if they had access to that pool, or there was automatically pumps at the pool, every house that has a pool has an automatic pump from here on. We have to do that, those simple things like that. I will say this, that I'm very grateful that you guys have stepped up in your way. I just have one question for each one of you. You can go, what's the best idea you've heard? Go around real quickly. What's the best idea you've heard?
Using your pool for water.
That was my answer.
You had the same. Come on, fancy architects.
With the best idea, I'm going to say it's is brush clearance.
Yes. And that means, just to elaborate on that, I mean, that means like landscape carefully.
I'm good shot.
Okay, go ahead.
I shot in the office.
Me too.
I think it has to do a lot with it has to do a lot with vegetation that's too close to things that will become flammable, and then vegetation that by its nature is highly flammable. So, the city is also trying to, facilitate this. But right now, my insurance company has mandated it, or I lose my insurance. So I understand that, that's an easy solution, and it's more removal. It's not you have to put in an infrastructure. It's really you have to trim, clean, and do all of that work. But I think that's a first step that almost everyone could do reasonably.
Yeah. I heard the idea of a pattern book that's been mentioned, and I think that could happen at so many scales, at architecture, interior design. Stop waiting for a client to come forward to inspire us. Let's group together and just mass produce as many great ideas as possible to get them out there to inspire other people to grab something from that.
I mean, best idea, we said it here earlier, is not being precious about it. I mean, by nature, I'm not a very sentimental person because I'm probably dead inside. But I would say, but there is something to be said about home and the feeling of it. And if we're too precious about it, we tend to start to work it to death and slow it down. And yes, be thoughtful, but also let's get the thing built.
Which I think just is a big rule for interior designers that I like to teach young interior designers in general. Don't get in your own way. Stop looking at 50 Shades of Pink. Get the shit done.
The stitching on the lampshade will be okay, the color that it is.
Your pillow's okay. Yes. We're not saving lives.
I mean, this is so basic and not creative, what's going to come out of my mouth. But I think that I know all the new homes that are being built are required to have sprinkler systems.
That seems big to me.
You know, I mean, it's basic.
Are they required? Is that a
I
requirement?
thought they were.
It's based on your zone.
Yeah.
Also your zone.
Yeah, my Altadena
That's been for a
client
while.
said it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good.
But we need to make them prettier, is the problem.
Yeah, we need pretty sprinklers. I do agree with you there.
And smoke detectors.
Yeah, a prettier smoke detector.
Some style.
Brass coated.
brass smoke detectors.
I think there's some new businesses going to be
Yeah,
born
right.
today.
I know, I'm starting to think.
For
Marcella?
me, the best idea, so I'm pretty solid with creating this visualization, Minecraft for real, but I think from today is that LA is where ideas become reality. And I think with all the amazing architects that we have, we could really come up with that playbook that, that we can control this built environment that is sustainable, resilient, ecological, and inclusive. And I think we have that potential. I feel very, after this panel, I feel very
Yeah, I feel
excited.
inspired too, actually.
Yeah.
I feel a little reinvigorated. I think I need it as well. Anybody else who wanted to speak to anything? Yes?
I think, Stacy, you brought it up about community and the tree and the landscaping. Has anybody heard anything about all the trees being brought back to Palisades or Altadena? Meaning from the city side or county?
I haven't heard from a city side, but I know that my client, potential client, let's cross our fingers, will be my client. They're lovely people, but they are required to have, as you mentioned, Richard, less, not only different type of vegetation, but less vegetation and vegetation further away from their home. Think flammable plantings that could spread fire. So the city is mandating that.
I'm saying in regards to as the city thought of all the city trees that were there that are gone, I think it goes back to your community. People saw trees in there.
You're right.
It makes it more inviting.
Yeah, it's so flat and so black. That's the part that's just staggering when I drive through. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. So I hope that becomes.
They are. They are.
Out of the interior design business going to tree business.
You're right. Brass
Bunch
detectors.
of new businesses
I
here.
know.
Let's
I love
talk.
it. I love
Time
it.
for a pivot.
Oh yes, Ms. Jen Champion, please.
I just wanted to mention, well, thank you for doing this panel. There is an organization called the Tree People, so perhaps they'll step up in a way. I haven't mentioned, I haven't looked them up recently, but I have volunteered with them in the past, so maybe there's an opportunity for them to come in. I just wanted to put
Again,
a
I do
period
think
on
that that's part of
thought.
something. I think that's part of the wonderfulness of all this, right? People are coming out of all their specialties and saying, "How can I help? How can I help? What can I do?" Anything else from people who might have been personally affected? How are you feeling?
Oh God, she doesn't want a microphone. She feels terrible.
I wanted to respond to the Tree People. I work with the Tree People, USGBC California.
really?
We're very close to the Tree People. And they, first of all, LA County has a really, you will be surprised how they have all on GIS, all available sidewalks that could be retrofitted. But we're thinking a lot about, as you know, trees, it's gonna take a long time before. So they're also thinking about shade structures, and they're also thinking about bioswales, so to create like a little micro, climate around the trees. So
Can we bring in trees? Again, ignorant. I don't know.
Yes.
Can we just bring in
yes,
trees?
but I think it's the proximity. So you have the 5, the 10, the 20, the 30, and then concrete walls that could have some kind of cultural character. I think this is an opportunity to bring local identity through concrete.
Back to the
walls.
concrete stuff really quickly. Like, how do we have to fireproof them? Like, can you not do cedar shake? Like, I didn't really feel like I got an answer to that. The cedar shake or the wood or that traditional Hamptons Palisades look, can that not be done anymore?
Well, I mean, the thing about a wood house is it doesn't necessarily just burst into flame, right? You've got to have the source. And embers are around 90-95% of the spread of any fire are the embers, and they get into the attic areas through ventilation or cracks and other things.
An open vent.
So it doesn't mean because your house is wood, it's just going to burst into flame. It's when you get these, these big flames that go through that it's going to go obviously to these materials first.
Is the answer going to be this new place in the valley that you mentioned, materials like
that?
that?
Well, I mean, we do get into this problem that, all of us who deal with architecture or green building codes know is wood is the greenest. The least green is metal and concrete.
Oh.
So we have an issue there too. It's not one solution solves all problems. But, aesthetics are going to drive a bit of what product you can use, and it doesn't mean you can't use wood. It means sometimes it's the size of the members. They don't burn easily when they're bigger as opposed to smaller. So the city banned trellises in new construction that have very small wood members. So there are these rules and regulations governing a lot of this that come up when you get a building permit. The problem is if you're just in a home and you're just going to do cosmetic work or minor work that's only going, under 50% of remodeling, you're not required to bring your project up to code either. So, it's all these factors. I think you have to identify each one. It may be there's no recipe that fits everybody. No one size fits all. I think it's going to be how building by building. And I think it's gonna come down a little bit to, again, what insurance companies tell you to do. They came around my house and said, you have to do this. Yeah. And okay, I'm gonna do it. Yeah. And I'm the architect, oddly enough, but I'm like the cobbler. The kids don't have any shoes. I think you have to have a bit of all of that together and produce guidelines that are sensible. You have to make this economically viable, or it won't happen.
That's the part that doesn't. I don't feel like anyone's
maybe there are
made any
tax
progress.
incentives for things like this. There's some tax incentives.
And aren't all the insurance people being like, no? Isn't that the answer? Just no? Sorry, you can't. I feel like there's not a lot of gracious. I feel like there's a lot of graciousness happening with designers. I feel like with architects, green people, a lot of thoughtfulness, but I just don't see massive. It's been a year. Where are the massive swings?
Well,
from
I think
insurance.
Insurance is a business though that only survives because a whole bunch of people don't use it. That's the same for car insurance, health insurance. You have to look at the nature of the industry, and. Yeah, it's you have to look at all of the items together, weigh them out, and make a rational solution that's going to work. Otherwise, you just get patchwork stuff that won't matter. And if your neighbor's house has lots of palm trees and bursts into flame, well, you better get that pool pump, or a pool if you don't have it. Yeah. So I think it's a combination of all the different things you can do in construction, but certainly mandate all new construction and remodeling to require sensible fire-resistant work and landscape. Don't plant palm trees, plant oak trees. A lot of it is, some of it's just common sense.
To oak trees, again, education.
They're highly fire-resistant.
Okay.
Compared to most trees. They were here.
Yeah.
They're natives, so.
I got this symbol. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Any questions? Yes, final question?
Something sort of synergistic that I heard was this idea of kind of where there may not be the ability to regulate, aesthetically, for example, but with a digital twin, the idea that if you can put out the digital twin, in the holacracy, which is a non-hierarchical business structure model, there's something called the advice process where no one's in charge of the other person, so you don't have a boss that tells you can or cannot do this thing, but you're required to ask advice of everyone who's affected in your company. So kind of the idea that the digital twin, while maybe we wouldn't even want there to be an aesthetic restriction, in places like Tuscany, for example, or in historic neighborhoods where if you have to use these paint shades, these 3 paint shades. I grew up in the East Coast, some of those places, it's very restricted, and that's how you go, and it still looks like the little village or whatever. But the idea that I think collectiveness and just that collective eye on the space could help create organically create a cohesiveness and also share that inspiration. So if they're looking at the digital twin, they see, oh, this person's doing this creative thing with a pool. And then hopefully, as the interior designer was saying, I will say that my family lost their home in a fire in 2018, which was my childhood home. It was a 140-year-old Victorian home. So sad. It was so awful. And also to those who did lose their homes. But it was just devastating. Fortunately, the insurance did pay for the rebuild, but it still kind of looks the same from the outside. But my parents who live there now, they got things that they never thought they would have. And so I think speaking to the interior designer as well, like in the rebuild, at least leaning into things that maybe you always dreamed of, or you can starting to get people actually excited and creative, something playful, something. So just lean into potential that you couldn't have had before. Looking for those aesthetic hints that are reminders of the culture and the color, and that hopefully the digital twin can. At least if everyone doesn't have to be a requirement, doesn't have to be a law, doesn't have to be a regulation, but if everyone can at least look at what other people are doing, there could be an organic
inspire
unity.
each other energetically, be positive. We spent a lot of time talking about time and money and materials today, but you're absolutely right. That's the perfect thing to end on. I grade us with the letter A today for this panel. If I do say so myself, I thought this was amazing, and everybody had such a good synchronicity. It was better than our Zoom call, even. And I'm going to turn it back over to Josh Cooperman, who's the star of all this. Thank you.
Oh, no, don't say that. That is absolutely not true. But can we give a little bit of love to these folks?
Incredible, right? So appreciative for everyone who participated in this. Thank you again to WestEdge Design Fair, Pacific Sales, Kitchen and Home, Kim Gordon Design. Loved working with all of you. And thank you to Adam, Marcella, Todd, Stacy, Sarah, Richard, for your contributions to this program. And thank you for listening and subscribing to the show so you can get all of these episodes automatically to your feed. And we will see you for episode 5 shortly. Thanks for listening. See you next time.